growth teams are very, very, very straightforwardly focused on like, how can I get cheap acquisition? And the problem with that is sometimes you're selling something that doesn't exist because it gets people through the funnel, right? And that's like, well, the rest of the team will deal with that. We think about that with ads. We think about that with the site experience. Like, what are you expecting? We think about that with shipping and delivery. We think about that with returns and even flavor. Like, are we saying this tastes 10 times better than a Coke? Because if that's the case, people might be disappointed. But if we say this is really delicious and it's 2 grams of sugar instead of 40, then we're framing it differently. And those expectations play in every single part of the experience. And so often we've seen brands just like, oh, this is a customer support problem, they'll handle it. And it's like, no, this is an expectation problem that started way before the person came to the support team.
Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, with the CX Godfather, the Olipop hustler, Eli Weiss. How are you, my friend? Thank you for coming on.
I'm good. I really appreciate you having me. I've recently...
You froze, maybe? Let's see.
Did I?
Is that my... Oh, there we go. You're perfect. There we go. I forgot to tell you, too. So all this is actually recording locally, so I don't think that'll happen again. But if it does, we can kind of keep rolling with it. But anyways... As always. I mean, hey, what a perfect example, right? Like, how do we get through this customer experience where this might not be the ideal start to the pod, but now we're laid out, right? And so
it's the recovery.
Right. It's not necessarily where you were, right? It's where you're going and how you deal with that hardship and make sure that empathy comes across to the client or the consumer. But before we get into all that, I am here in the Austin HQ of Triple Whale. Where does this podcast find you?
I'm in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love it. City of brotherly love. Awesome. How long have you been in PA?
Sir. I moved from Brooklyn in August, so fairly new. If anyone has any good food spots to recommend, the pizza spot I have to go to, please hit me up.
Oh, I love that. What prompted the Brooklyn? That's a really slick area, man. I used to work for an agency called Flatiron many moon ago, and they were in New York, and we would always play around like the Williamsburg, kind of like Brooklyn's a spot. It was a really, really hip area.
Yeah. So grew up in Jersey, lived in Washington Heights for a couple of years, went to Israel for a little trip to meet some friends, got stuck there for 4 years, got married there, moved back to the States, lived in Brooklyn for a couple of years, have a lot of family there, grew up nearby, and wife started med school in Philly in August. So we just moved to Philly and we're stuck here for a minute. So we'll be here for at least 4 years and we'll see where it takes me after.
How cool. What, does she have a specialty yet? Or is she just kind of right now getting the MD and then she'll kind of ratchet down?
Yeah. We're just vibing. We're on the vibe train. Yeah.
Is it better or worse than Brooklyn?
It's quieter and quieter comes with pros and cons. Means that your brain makes more noise, means that the external noise is somewhat quieter. So it's a toss up, but I'm getting used to it.
I love it. Do you guys have any pets or anything?
We have a pet child. He's Noah, almost 9 months old.
Oh, congrats. How cool.
Yeah. A super, super loud and excited child. Doesn't get it from me, but we're here for it and we're excited.
How incredible. So you're on customer experience all across the board on your work side as well as the personal side. That's fantastic, my man.
We figured once it's chaotic, we'll go all in.
I love that. That's fantastic. So I was doing some little bit of stalking on you. It looks like you're a bit of a vagabond. You've been to 34 countries. Is that right?
Yeah. So when most people my age were in college, I decided I wanted to travel and figured out the points and miles game at a pretty young age. So in my early 20s, 20, 21, 22, I was based in Israel and traveling to Europe every couple of weeks. So saw most of Europe, and then a couple of years later went to China, Singapore, Bali. So really had the incredible luxury to travel very early in my life. Now not as much, but I originally had I had this goal of seeing every single country, getting to 196 or 198, depends who you ask. Now, not so much. I'm okay with seeing the 60 that I really want to see, but but we shift the goalposts. But
That's incredible. What was the hardest visa to get?
China took the longest, just because it's, US and
Beijing
China
or
aren't just,
Shanghai, or where did
yeah,
you go
yeah.
to?
We spent 8 days in Beijing, and it was interesting. Once you get that visa, they give you like a 10-year visa, so you're kind of in. But it took a minute, and it costed, I think, like 100 and something dollars.
Okay.
Compared to the rest of the visas, they're fairly easy to get. So yeah.
So what was your biggest hack? Was there like 4x points and stuff like that? Or what was let the people know, how can people travel? Cause what are you, 30-ish years old?
Give or take, yeah.
Give or take. Yeah. Yeah. So
Um,
you're still a young gun then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I am. So the hack was essentially learning how credit works, and realizing that having a lot of cards is not a bad thing if you do it smartly. So at my prime, I had 34 credit cards, still with a credit line of 800 and something. So I learned at a young 20 years old, I learned about credit from this Chase Bank branch manager, essentially how to build credit at a reasonable pace, and take advantage of these new credit card bonuses. So every card you open up, you get between 50 and 120,000 points. And if utilized correctly and transferred to the right partner, something like that can get you, a round trip ticket to multiple places. When you're based out of Israel, a lot of airlines consider that Europe. So getting from Israel to any other part of Europe is like 5 or 10 or 15,000 points. And hotels there are super duper cheap as well with points. So it just, most people end up getting points and using it in Park City, and those points don't really get you much as far as, when you think about the broader picture. You can hack your way around to getting a lot more value, and credit card companies really assume that most people just take these points and use it for cash back, and that's their ideal and your worst bet. But
How incredible. I just have anxiety, like sweaty palms of keeping track of 34 cards. Like I just imagine this huge notebook and like just slot in, what card do I need today? And
so
like, that's
so
a
it's
whole
pretty simple.
production.
It's pretty simple. So my wallet is just a tiny one that looks like this, and I just use a few cards in a rotation. So every couple of months I'll swap cards based on what I need to spend on, but it's not as wild as one might think. But this is probably an episode in and of itself.
No wonder you got the fancy sculptures that we were talking about offline. Now I see how you're building this.
Yeah, real
um,
wealth. Yeah.
so you did all this travel. How did you break into e-com? How did you break into kind of retail? How did you break into customer experience? Like, give us some
Yeah.
background there.
So grew up in the ultra Orthodox Jewish world. Didn't really have any education per se. Went to you know went to Israel, traveled a lot. So really started very, very late. My passion has always been customer service. Like, I hate bad experiences so much. When a customer, when a person, myself, spend money on something, been excited for months, and finally pull that trigger and have a mediocre or worse than expected experience, it really pissed me off as a young, you know, 12-year-old and 10-year-old. Always thought that it wasn't like, I just remember being like a really furious kid being like, I saved this money for months and then I bought something and it takes 3 weeks to get here. Like, how's that fair? And I remember just hearing those canned responses kind of over and over and over. It's like, I'm sorry, sir. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. And I'd be thinking like, it feels like you can just take a little accountability, and I'd be less angry. And just seeing that it felt like there was like, the hack was just being a person, and it felt like it was always very easy to be mad at a brand or like at this like person that doesn't have a face or a name. When it's, when you put a person in front of it, it's less difficult to be angry. So pretty much traveling a lot, came back to Israel and was looking to either, did my GED diploma equivalent, was excited to either hop into college or figure out a way to kind of hack the system the same way I did with travel. And essentially my thought back then was, if I'm based out of Israel, there's a huge startup scene, but the bulk of the people there don't speak a native English. So that was my hack, was like, I can do any job that you'd like me to. I'll leave my ego at the door and I speak English. And I have this native English capability, and essentially was obsessed with travel, got excited about luggage. Took me like 4-ish years to realize that I hate luggage. I love traveling. But got excited about luggage and hopped into this Kickstarter brand, and they were, multiple years delayed on a production, and everyone wanted a refund. So in terms of like customer service, it was the worst place it can be. And I've shared this story quite a couple of times about like how we hypothesized about what we can do to turn the business around, and customer service turned the business around, full stop. And that was really my foray into kind of e-commerce and CPG, and spent a couple of years there doing everything from business development, investor relations, trade shows, sales, marketing, strategy, customer service, ops, sending these Kickstarter orders to 65 countries. And then basically COVID hit and luggage wasn't a hot seller, and swore I wouldn't touch food and beverage. My family has been in that world for 50-ish years. But here I am. So hopped into Nugs in which is now Simulate in 2020. And then shortly thereafter hopped into Olipop, again, a brand that was doing incredibly well then and has really rocketed over the last kind of year and a half, 2 years. But that's the gist of it.
Yeah, I love that. I just have this incredible kind of mental model of a 12-year-old Eli getting called sir, just dressing somebody down. Where's my package? Where's my package? That's brutal. Amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, what a cool journey. And so what do you think the resources you used, or like, was there frameworks, or like how did you get, because I would consider you kind of at the pinnacle or very, very top tier in terms of CX. And really, like, if I was building a CX team, like we have a fantastic customer success team, but I would really emulate you, like, I think in terms of the way you think about it. And you're so young, and you really haven't had like a ton of actual like CX experience outside of Nugs and Olipop, right? Like, it's been more of a smorgasbord of whatever you need done, I get done. So how did you gain like this top tier mastery of customer success?
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I think the first and foremost is, coming from a non-traditional background, nothing for me was accepted at face value. It was always like, how would I want to be treated, and less so of a rule book and a playbook. And I think that's kind of been the downfall of most parts of startup world, is that as time has gone on, there's been playbooks, and there's like, somebody will tell you how to run Facebook ads, and somebody will tell you how to run TikTok ads, and somebody will tell you how to deal with customer experience. And those playbooks have really, in my opinion, have helped a lot of people, but really disrupted a lot of other people's strategies, because every business is different. And I think that the only like framework that I had, is if I was the customer, how would I want to be treated? And I think it comes to a point where it's like, well, it has to be good for the business. And I think it's obviously not a zero-sum game, right? It's like, you can have instances where you can really, really, really mess up as a business, right? Like in the case of a luggage company, that people order 2 years earlier and expected to get the product, and they're being told it's here. And it's, like, that's like, according to everyone, this luggage company screwed up, right? And it's like, but it's how do you frame that, and how do you think about that, and how do you explain to the customers what you really want to do with this, and where you messed up, and being very forward and upfront. And that's the biggest thing I constantly talk about, is setting those expectations. And for a CPG brand, it's like supply chain issues, and there's warehousing issues, and there's shipping delays. It's like there's things happening across the board, and setting those expectations and delivering on them feels like a bar that's so low. But so many brands optimize for like, how can we go above and beyond? And what I describe is like, those peaks instead of filling the valleys. And that's really like the biggest thing that I've learned over the last couple of years, is like, how can we just focus on just delivering on expectations, full stop.
I love that. And that's funny that you say that, because so this podcast has been great, because I get to pick the brains of like really high top tier experts. And that's almost what everybody comes back to, is first principles of like, if we can get these first principles right, like the delight will come from that. But if you start concentrating and getting overcomplicated and really losing the forest for the trees, if you will, it can be challenging. And there's also a certain aspect of, I think people have a really good BS detector. And when you stop being insincere or not genuine about, to your point, setting expectations properly, because that to me is so I come from an economics background. It's called anchoring, like price anchoring, right? And so it's kind of same, but different. It's almost cognitive anchoring where it's like, oh, cool, I'm expecting X, or I'm expecting Y.
Yep.
And like that letdown is so severe. It's way better to be upfront, take the loss and deal with it versus kicking this can down the road, because at a certain point it becomes a tinderbox and all it takes is like a misworded tweet or something like that. And then everybody just piles on when it's like, dude, we're a company. Things happen. We have some shipping delays. Here's how we can make it better. Here's what we're doing to try and make it better. We understand like this sucks for you and this wasn't our intention, but here's what it is. And, you know, obviously you're still going to catch flack for that, but at least there's a foundational ground of like, you know, people make mistakes. It is what it is. You can't perpetually do this, right? Like you can only go to the well so many times, but I've found that transparency actually plays a lot better in getting people to empathize, where it's like, hey, we're just humans too. And we're trying to do our best. And we missed the mark this time. I'm sorry. You know, here's where we were, here's where we are, and here's where we're going. And however I can make this right, let me know. And if we can do it, we'll do it. But when you get into these kind of really like the Peloton stuff, I've been just fascinated with it, how it just got so wrecked. 70,
Yep.
I think it's 76% off its high. Like, I mean, just absolutely wrecked. And one of the debacles there was the treadmill thing where the Consumer Reports are like, hey, this, or not Consumer Reports, whatever the governing body is in the States, is like, there's dogs and babies getting hurt like pretty severely. Like, you need to take this off the market. And they're like, no, that's not true. They're being absolutely overzealous. This isn't right at all. And then they're like, yeah, this is actually happening. And then they have to make this retraction. And at that point, it was just, I mean, it couldn't have been mismanaged anymore, in my opinion. And obviously, the stock price reflects that. But I think that's just kind of a pressing example of what you're talking about there, to be just really, again, those first principles. And like, what if you were buying this product, how would you want to be treated? And it sounds so silly, right? It sounds almost like juvenile, but at the same time, it's like, in my opinion, like some of the best expert advice is like, that's it.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. The two things I kind of think about when we think about, you know, customer experience broadly is like, number one, taking accountability. And I think your point about taking accountability is spot on. Again, it's the focus for me is twofold, right? Number one, it's like we're not just saying this never happened and then, you know, consumers lose trust. But the second part that's also super fascinating is it's so easy to be pissed off and angry at Olipop. It's so much more difficult to be angry at Eli or Janelle or anyone else on my team. And that's really the number one, like that's the strong point, is like being a person versus being a canned response behind a computer of a brand that you're like, oh, we hate brands because it's super hard to be angry at a person that did nothing wrong and it's just doing their best to get you your order. The second thing that's super fascinating is when you talk about anchoring and anchoring on the price side, but also anchoring on the expectation side. I think it's a very spot on comment. And we think about that. We've seen across shipping, right? For example, we have UPS or FedEx shipping 3 to 5 days. Then we have Ohio, which does same day, next day. We've seen that if we are 2 days late with UPS, people are very okay with that because they're like, oh, it's UPS. They kind of messed up. If we're 3 hours late on a same day delivery, customers go off the hook. So it's that expectation. It's like, if we said this will come here tomorrow and it gets there today, people are like, wow. But if we say it'll get there in 2 hours, people are already desensitized to the 2 hour mark that you gave, as like, oh my God, how do you even do that? And to get there in 3 hours, and people are like, the whole thing is not worth it. And we think about that framing across every part of the experience. We think about that as far as the ads, like what are these ads promoting, right? It's like growth teams are very, very, very straightforwardly focused on like, how can I get cheap acquisition? And the problem with that is sometimes you're selling something that doesn't exist because it gets people through the funnel, right? And that's like, well, the rest of the team will deal with that. But we think about that with ads. We think about that with the site experience. Like, what are you expecting? We think about that with shipping and delivery. We think about that with returns and even flavor. Like, are we saying this tastes 10 times better than a Coke? Because if that's the case, people might be disappointed. But if we say this is really delicious and it's 2 grams of sugar instead of 40, healthy, then we're framing it differently. And that's like, those expectations play in every single part of the experience. And so often we've seen brands just like, oh, this is a customer support problem, they'll handle it. And it's like, no, this is an expectation problem that started way before the person came to the support team.
I love that. I love how you look at kind of the holistic experience of starting from touching an ad all the way to shipping times. I think that's something that gets really lost, and I think that's really what what sets you apart. Okay, one last question for the main segment. So how do you stay so happy, healthy, and productive? So I see you on the Twitters. I see you like, and now I didn't even know you had a kiddo. So you have a kiddo, wifey's in med school. Like that's a lot on your plate. How do you balance all that?
I'd be remiss if I said I'm always happy, healthy, and productive. I think that's the tremendous downfall of social media is people share their highlights. So I'll stop you there. Definitely not always happy, healthy, and productive, but I think with everything else, it's balance, right? It's like it's balance both on the gratitude side, it's balance both on the work side, right? It's like I push my team, like we just instituted mental health Fridays where people on the CX team will take one Friday off a month. Like it's balance with everything. It's like people that hustle hard generally have to pay for it at some point.
Yes.
So we when I say we, I mean me at work, me in my life, me in my relationship, me with my child. Like I try to balance everything. Have super hectic days, have super quiet days where I just catch up on email. So try to keep things balanced, but happy, healthy, and productive. Three things I'm striving for, but definitely not fully there always. So thank you though.
I love that. I love the candidness. It's beautiful. I think you're right. Sometimes there is a bit of, I can't remember who said this, but it was somebody kind of basically getting to the point that you're making of like, if you want to trade spots with somebody, you have to realize like you take their whole life. You don't just take this one sliver, where it's like you see this like sliver and like, oh my gosh, I would love that. And you're like, man, you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes there. And sometimes, it drives that weird, not jealousy, but this kind of, to your point, like a bit of misrepresentation where it's like, everybody's usually going through something. So be loving out there, people on socials. Spread the light, not the dark. Fantastic. Well, you made it to the main segment already. Flying through. Yeah. You got the Olipop halfway done. Let's do it. Okay. Let's get into the value add segment. This is why people bought the ticket. What are the best parts and hardest parts of running a customer experience team?
The best parts are definitely the people. Like if you put together a squad of people that have a similar vision to you and have the ability to inspire them, that's so meaningful. When we think about customer support, most people come to my team with problems. Like they expected something we didn't deliver. They hate the product. They think it tastes terrible. It came too late. And anything about that's a lot of negativity for the most part, right? Like the percentage of, oh my God, this was the best thing ever, thank you, are very small. So I think that's like, working with great people that are excited to take those, frowns and turn them upside down is the best part, right? Like working with people that frankly I'm inspired by. Every day is incredible. The hardest part is the flip side of that. It's really disappointing. Like if you're really good at CX, you have this kind of superpower that you can read between the lines and deeply feel things. And when we have a situation where somebody reaches out and they've ordered 7 times and had an issue with 6 of the orders because of a shipping issue, that really sucks. And it's like, I can't, run to Montana, pick it up and bring it to you in Texas, but I can like do my best to resolve it, but it really sucks. And somebody reaches out that they got it and the can exploded. It's not a big deal. It's a can of soda, but it's like, these instances that you can't just wave a wand at and fix are can be difficult. There can be a day where a bunch of people just slide in the DMs with not nice things, right? It's like it weighs on you, and if you're good at this, you feel it very deeply. So the hardest part is making sure that I prioritize everyone's mental health and make sure that people are telling me when they need to take time and kind of keeping people healthy and happy, mentally and physically. So that's like the most challenging, I shouldn't say hardest, but the most challenging part of running the CX team is, just in general, the CX people are, I've heard this a couple of times, are like the turnover is so fast on a CX team because people aren't getting paid very well. They're generally not put on a pedestal like they should be. So it's something that, I've been trying to talk more about and change, but it's not the work of one person. So we're working on it.
I absolutely love that. And there's a certain aspect too, kind of like you said, it's the gift and the curse, right? Of like that empathy is really important for a really high level CX person, but at the same time, not being able to block that out. So I used to run competitively in university, and I don't remember any of my wins, but I remember the losses.
Wow.
And so it's kind of like that kind of stuff where it's like, I can imagine that, all these people, I love this, I love that, but it's that one barb that gets thrown at you and you just can't stop thinking about it. And it's just like, oh my gosh, you had 10 amazing comments, but then there's those 2 comments that really just, grate on you. And to your point too, it's challenging where, maybe it's an infrastructure thing. Maybe to your point, it's way further up the chain and you're just catching the flack for it now. And sometimes there's not any resolution other than I'm sorry and we'll do better next time. And that
Yep.
that can fall flat sometimes, and rightfully so, where it's just, it is what it is. And it's just a challenge where sometimes you got to take the L and hope you can do better next time. But I love that, man. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
When evaluating customer experiences, what is the most important thing you look for?
How expectation meets reality. I think that there's so much, commerce started from people buying from other people. The internet really changed that, whereas you're now buying from a black box. I think that brand has been, and we heard Cody from Jones Road talking about that a lot, how brand is so imperative to experience broadly. And brand really creates this almost facade of like, there's a person, there's like something emotional that you're feeling. But for the most part, people purchasing on eBay or Grailed or StockX or Amazon, you're just buying from this thing. And there's been like, the wishes of the world that have, like you buy something that looks like X and you get it and you're like, well, this is, and we've seen celebrities launch brands where customers get it and they drag them all over Twitter. Like, this is not what it looked like when you were wearing it. And I think that's really like, there's like almost this like trauma for consumerism around like, we generally don't even like, our expectations are so low and we order something online that like, it'll never look as good as it did on the model. It'll never look as good as it looked in that poor shop. So we think about that of like, how can we level set expectations? Like, we obviously want to sell this. So we're like choosing great photography and
Sure.
that's why fashion brands have models, right? But there's also that level setting of expectations. And I think that's, for me as a consumer, it's like, if I ever buy anything online, I'm like, I'm matching it to the expectation I had when I clicked place order. And the closer I can get to that, the better, the more spot on I feel like is, the broader experience. Obviously, when I think about like what goes wrong with a brand experience and how they handle it, and I've shared this quite a couple of times because it drives me absolutely insane, but I've like ordered a pair of shoes from a brand for like $150 or $200 and got the shoes and they were too small and they said, sure, you can return it. And then once I sent it back, they gave me store credit and it's like, they didn't have the shoe anymore. So now I'm like, now I can buy a t-shirt, but like, I never wanted. And you're like, those like, and these brands obviously hold all the power because it's a streetwear brand and it's super cool and they sell out in minutes. And it's like, you hold the power, so you keep getting those purchases, but the emotional power, like that brand, when you think about a brand, it's like, will I die for this brand? And I don't know that that's like a place people have to be. Like, I don't think people have to die for a brand, but like, do I feel that level of like, I'm obsessed with this brand? No, I think wearing their clothing makes me look cool. So I might continue giving them money, but am I at that? And you'll see people argue about this on Twitter all the time. It's like, who cares if you have a brand, you're making money. And it's like, well, those are two different things, right? Like making money and creating, this visionary brand thing. Like, Apple is Apple. They're making money and they have a brand. There are plenty of companies that do a lot of revenue, but people don't feel anything towards it. And I think the real, exactly,
hate
right?
Right. And they print money. It's a fantastic business, but it's
and
people hate them.
I think about like the where that distills down to is like referrals, word of mouth, genuine referrals. Like, that's where you really see the difference between brand. It's like, nobody tells you like, oh, you better check out AT&T. And if you said that, it's because you have a family plan, you want a discount. But it's like, it's really like that. It's like, and that's what it distills down to is like, where is that word of mouth magic coming? And I think about that, marketers hate word of mouth because you can't measure it, right? We like things that we can measure, but when you create that brand, like anyone that asks me what laptop they should buy, I'm not telling them Lenovo, right? It's like, I'm telling them Apple, like, you want to be cool, get a MacBook, right? It's like that level of brand, like, that's like my aspiration when working with a company is like, how can we get to that place where people are just organically saying like, hey, dude, I know you're drinking a lot of Diet Coke. It's not great for you. Check out Olipop or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I have a thesis where I don't think you can have a great brand with a bad product. I think you can have a great brand with a mediocre product, but I don't think you can have a great brand with a bad product. Like it eventually
I'd
just
agree.
catches up with you. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd agree.
Yeah. Like,
I'd agree. I
yeah,
think
it's challenged.
marketers only have that many chances, right? It's like, and we think
Yep.
about that in the frame of LTV, right? It's like cheap
Yes.
CAC only gets you so far, right? Like cheap CAC gets you that first order, but it's like if you ask any marketer, it's like, and that's like we talk about that as far as like incentives, right? When you think about agency incentive being like, how can you get me a lot of dollars with this couple of $1,000s I'm giving you a month, and
Yes.
they're getting a commission based on revenue they're bringing in, and the cheaper the CAC, the better it is. But nobody's looking at LTV, right? And the double on that is like cheap CAC customers generally haven't been brought through a long enough funnel, haven't had enough education
Yep.
around the product, and they're probably less likely to refer people. So aside from their own LTV, you're thinking about referral LTV. So I think it's like it's a very long conversation around like the incentives, but I think that's like the most important thing for us is like how can we bring super fans into
Love it.
this, and that's
Love
like,
it.
you know.
I love that. And I think kind of to pile on even more is when you do acquire people that want to be integrated into the story and they feel an emotional connection, there's a lot more leeway there where they're going to be way like, that's why I always thought Groupon was just such a horrible idea. Like good on him. Andrew Mason made a shit ton of money. I'm happy he did that, but like they were just the worst customers. All like, I very rarely think that price is the objection. It's usually I don't see value in it, or maybe I
Mm.
just literally don't have the resources. That's not the same thing as that costs too much, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
you just don't value it or you don't have the resources. That's totally. And so I think price is just this knee jerk reaction that people say, oh, it costs too much. Does it? Does it cost too much? Or is it more so like you're just not connecting with the brand? You don't see how you can generate the value from this purchase, so on and so forth. And so I think that to your point, CX should almost be seen, and I think you do a great job of this, but almost as a retention play where you're really going to have this kind of really amazing experience throughout this whole product journey or essentially the life cycle of your interaction with the brand. And CX, and we talked about it in other podcasts as well. I think CX is one of the most interesting parts of the marketing ecosystem because it's the only place that you can either make an evangelist or like a I will hate you for life person. Like you can't do that with a product. You can't do that pretty much any other, not with an email, not with a video, not even in-person events. Like really, because you're so charged up. And in that moment of charged up, you're super vulnerable. And if you're not taken care of in that super vulnerable way, you are going to lash back 10 times harder than you really needed to. And, or if you do get, interacted with in the way that you deserve, you're going to become an evangelist. And I've seen people that evangelize stuff that like it wasn't even a good experience, but the CX team has done such a good job of bringing them around that they're like, oh yeah, my thing didn't get here, my Olipop can exploded, blah, 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 but I still can't wait to try the cola. You're just like, how? And I think that's one of the most unique opportunities that kind of the customer success, customer experience team has that pretty much no other part of the marketing ecosystem has.
I'd agree with you 100%. I think the interesting thing we think about, especially when you're talking about a food and beverage, obviously taste preferences vary and we don't all like the same things. And you'll see me drop comments all over Twitter of anyone that says like Olipop tastes like, like garbage. And I'll be like, I'm so sorry you didn't like it. Let me know your order number. We'll give you a full refund. And the objective for us is like, we really strongly believe that if somebody didn't have a great experience with the product but still loved the way the brand treated them after, they have the potential to they can be a word of mouth referral for us by saying like, hey, I know you're trying to quit soda. Olipop, I didn't like it because X, Y, and Z, but you might really love it and the brand is really great. And that's like, if I can turn detractors into this roundabout promoters, like that's my dream. And again, not trackable, but I know that if I had a terrible experience because I didn't like something and I know it's my own preference, I will still tell other people about it if I think the product is a great product at heart and I think it makes sense.
I love that, and I'm kind of same vein as well. Where Yeah, like sometimes it just doesn't fit your preference set, but that doesn't mean it's a bad product, right? And so you can still recommend it to other people. And to your point, if there's people that want that value on those certain value vectors that you're offering, it's fantastic. And you just don't feel so burnt. Like there's just a certain aspect of like, I don't know, getting taken advantage of or something where like you want to yell at somebody because I gave you money, my hard earned money. And I think it also rolls back to what you were saying earlier, that expectation setting, that social contract that we established, you broke it. And I feel betrayed now. And now I'm going to yell at you because you betrayed me. I love that, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we see people just like tweeting without like they don't even write at Olipop or anything. They're just like Olipop is the worst. I hate these influencers, and I'm like, I don't know who you expected to read that, but I'm here. And let's talk about it. Like, let's talk about it. Where did you buy it? Why did you not like it? Can I send you some coupons so you can try out a different flavor? Can I fully refund it? Can I give you something else? And I think that obviously blows people away because they're tweeting that into the abyss and they don't expect Eli to hop in there. But I think to your point, right? Like people are supercharged and they've spent a lot of money on a product that might be worth it. I don't know if they felt like it was worth it then, if they've done the research and understood why it costs the price it costs, but being able to kind of let them down slowly is definitely a big plus. So I agree.
Yeah, I love that. And going back to your previous point as well, putting that, I love how you say it's so easy to be mad at a brand. It's very challenging. Not to say you can't be mad at a person, but it takes a real, piece of work to kind of keep that going. And not to say, that I haven't been there and not been always the best customer, but it's so much more challenging to really, unload on somebody or just somebody down versus just yelling at this nebulous brand or something like that and just screaming into the ether. It's amazing.
In as much, in as much as you feel like the person's doing their best,
yes,
their best to resolve it.
Very good point. Very good point. When they're just, regurgitating the script or whatever, that's super challenging. That's almost more infuriating where you're just like, bro, you're reading off a screen right now. You're clicking through and you can almost feel them going through their like motions of like, hold on, I got to get to this next screen. And there's these awkward pauses that aren't actually conversational. And yeah, that can be really challenging because again, it comes across like you were talking about, like if I was running a brand and I was in their shoes, like you want to feel cared for, right? Like I'm making this intimate relationship with you in a purchase and like, you basically don't care about me or that's how you feel. And then that again sparks a whole can of worms. Who does the best CX? Who has the best customer experience that you've had? Who's your favorite?
Oh Lord. I mean, there are some of the big ones like the Zappos and the Chewies of the world.
Yeah.
Those are the ones I look up to. Even within the realm of just like the realm of the CPG world, I love what Lalo does. They sell baby stuff. Missy is there and she's crushing it. Huron on the skincare side. Matt is. Being a CEO and hopping into the inbox and replying to people, talking about the weather at the place they're in, the personal touch, delivering things on bike if it's near him. I mean, that's next level. I just love when brands do things that don't scale and focus on that strongly.
I love that. That's amazing. Let's get one more in. Or actually, there's two more, but we have listener questions. So one more of my questions. What's the biggest mistake you've seen in CX? Like when people are spinning up the CX teams? And you might have touched on it. Is it kind of following the playbook stuff and just having those dogmas, or is there something else?
Oh, Lord. So this is a hot take and it might get me in trouble, but I really strongly dislike when people outsource CX just to save money. I think there is a time and place to outsource CX. Like, for example, if you want to scale up a brand really quickly or if you need 300 reps, but I think that very few people actually do the math and they'll say like, I need 25 people. And then you look at the amount of tickets that my 3 customer experience people do versus their 35 reps and God knows where. It's not even, the pricing is not even that different. And I think that saying that you strongly believe in CX and you think this is the biggest and best part of the business when you don't outsource anything else in your business, it's my hot take and it might get me canceled someday. But I think that it's like, I think that those things can't both be true. You can't like think that CX is the most important part of the business and pay people $5 an hour to reply to your tickets. So
I couldn't agree with you more. I'll die on that hill with you. Yeah, no, we'll fight off the Twitter paparazzi, but I don't even think that's a hot take. I think that's absolutely spot on, and um, I, I think again, kind of going back to that, like, why would you give the keys of the kingdom, the most fragile state that a customer is going to be in, and then nothing against like people that don't speak English as their first language, but when you're already fired up, and then you're using this cognitive load to kind of like get through people that like, it's great that people speak other languages and stuff, but at the same time, like, you're not in a really good headspace to generate empathy when you're pissed off already. And then there's another thing that you have to figure out. And then there's another thing. And then you're like, oh, well, so what? And then you kind of connect the dots and you're like, oh, that's why they're doing this, because it's economical. It's not because it helps me. And then, and then that even enrages you even more. I think that's such a sensational answer. Spot on. Okay, cool. Let's get into some listener questions and then we'll get into the rapid fire. Okay, the first one, this is from Jess. So we have two of them. One's a fun one and one's just, this is actually a serious one. How do you get stakeholders to care and invest in customer experience, especially if they're in the sales acquisition side or more sales acquisition oriented? Do you have any tips there?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Jess. Love the Fire Team Squad, and thank you for being my favorite reply people. I think that the conversation always becomes around, again, Cody thinks about this very, very, very uniquely in the way that great customer experience lowers your cost of acquisition over time. Great customer experiences raise your LTV over time. Those are provable metrics. And when we think about that, it's like if you want to create a brand is created by great experiences that people have with your product and your customer support team and your customer experience team. So great product, great experiences. When you think about sales and acquisition, the best, like the larger your brand gets, the cheaper acquisition gets. So I think that's just framing that as LTV, retention, cheaper acquisition over time.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. You'll be able to raise the ceiling on the LTV, lower the CAC, and then ultimately, to your point as well, another kind of positive externality is you'll just have all these brand evangelists as well.
Yep.
Which is another really great thing where like you don't have to pay for it. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's influencer, blah blah blah, but having this organic steam is just almost invaluable in a way where it's really hard to kind of pay for that, because at a certain point it comes across as an influencer where there's nothing wrong with that. It's fantastic, but it's not the same as just some OG mom or kid like oh, Olipop's fantastic. Like there's something genuine about that.
I mean, okay. You're seeing that with I'm just going to give you some credit because you're not taking credit today, but you're seeing that with Triple Whale too, right? It's like people are nonstop talking about it and they're just excited and blown away by the experience they have with your tool. And I think that's, again, like in a space where there's so many options and everything's so competitive, the ability to create these evangelists by just blowing people's minds is what it takes. And it's like, think about competitive advantages, like having super fans is a very, very, very strong competitive advantage, especially in a beverage space, in a SaaS space. Like these are all spaces where having people that don't stop talking about a product, whether it's online or to their friends, et cetera, is a unfair competitive advantage.
Okay, you're trying to soften me up for rapid fire. It's not going to work, Eli. It's not going to work. And this is just a joking one, but we need to get the fridge full in the Austin HQ of Olipop. That's from our head of social, Tommy.
Not a joke. We must do it. And congrats on the new role, Tommy.
Yeah, look at you, just connected, Eli. You just have your web is everywhere, and nothing. You're like the eye of Sauron, just seeing everything. All right, my man, you made it into the final segment. This is rapid fire, so strap in. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, overrated, underrated, paid media.
Wow, this is going to be a rapid one. Underrated.
Ooh, and you can pontificate if you want, or you can just keep going through. Customer success, overrated, underrated.
Overrated.
Whoa!
So I'll say that. The reason why I say that is because I think there's a difference between customer success and experience. And traditional customer success has gone very, very far into the sales realm.
Yep.
And they get paid way too much compared to customer experience. So that's my little riff there. So I'll say overrated on the success. Yeah.
I love it. Traveling, overrated, underrated?
Underrated.
Ooh, I love it.
I mean, travel... I'll say this on travel. Travel has really opened my mind into seeing things differently. The more different kinds of people you see in different countries. There's the twofold, right? You see that people are wildly different than what you expected, but also you see that humans are the same, and being able to connect with somebody even though you don't speak a word of the same language just by smiling at them is life changing. Brooklyn is definitely underrated, but I'd say that you have to really choose a spot that makes sense, because it's like Williamsburg is probably overrated by this at this point, just cost of rent and cost of living.
I was just gonna say it can get a little spicy, a little spicy with those rents, but
gotta choose a spot.
I love that. I know you just moved there, but do you have a favorite city in PA yet?
My hack has been, if you don't leave the house, it doesn't matter where you are. So that should give you a little bit of a perspective of what I've seen in Pennsylvania.
Fair play. Talking to customers, overrated or underrated?
100% underrated. But you knew that.
I love it. I'm throwing you some softballs here. You see, maybe the softening up did work. Gosh damn it. Yeah. NFT loyalty programs, overrated, underrated?
This is the toughest one, because I'm going to say underrated. The caveat is that I think that the Web3 NFT thing as a whole, this is my spicy hot take for those that listen to the end, is massively overspoken about in a tiny group of people on Twitter. And 99%, my mom has no idea what an NFT is. And when I told her people pay money for JPEGs, she couldn't believe it. And we fixed that with like, oh, there's utility and blah, blah, blah. And I understand the value of the potential value that NFTs can have, but understanding that a tiny part of the world is in on this. The exciting thing about the caveat is that loyalty programs, I think that the hack there is there's a vested interest by the community to create value here. And I think that vested interest of, as I create value, it brings up my token, can go two ways. It can go grifting, where everyone's like, holy shit, you won't believe what happened in this community today, which can get wacky. But I think if done, removing grifting and building community by vested interest, everyone can make money by creating and cultivating a nice space, is not like your Facebook groups of 2010. And that's more, I think that's the future. So.
Yeah, I do too. We have some feelers out, because I think there's something interesting there, and it can be a really interesting lever in terms of your almost like an extension of community, and the mechanism is just NFT. But yeah, I love that. What gave you more gray hair? Obviously, you don't have gray hair, but what gave you, I guess, more challenges, traveling to 36 countries or Olipop CX?
Oh Lord. Wow, that wasn't a softball one at all.
It's rapid fire. Come on, we have a rep to keep up here.
Travel. Just keeping up with all the points and constantly having to earn points to travel. Once you travel for free, it becomes really, really difficult to pay for a trip. And I can count on my one hand how many times in my life I've paid for a ticket at full price, but it turns you into a psycho where you just feel horrible paying for something that you never paid for. So it definitely gave me, instead of the gray hair, I lost most of my hair to that. So
I love it. Favorite meal and why?
I love kosher style food because it's what I grew up eating. Love Chinese food. It's my comfort food whenever I have like a really, really great day, where it's like I want to celebrate, or I had a really trash day that I just want to like eat my feelings. Definitely eating my feelings with Chinese food.
Oh, I love that. Your favorite in-person marketing event?
I candidly have not been to many in person.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been to any yet, but I'm excited about events that instead of focusing on a product, focus on a space, like an event for email or an event for SMS or an event for e-com is more exciting than like an event to just talk about Klaviyo.
Yep. I love that. Favorite place travel to and why?
I was obsessed with Belgrade, Serbia.
Really?
I thought that it was one of the most underrated cities I've ever been to. The cost of things are super cheap. The people are extremely friendly. I like asked somebody for directions and they walked me all the way there. They're not accustomed to having a million tourists like Rome and Paris. And it's a stunning place. Belgrade, Serbia, and my next I'd say is Prague. I've been there more times than I can count because it's magical. It gives you what you overpay for in Paris and Rome, you get at Prague for a more reasonable price. So that's a more entry level. I think Belgrade is a little off the beaten path, but
Yeah, that's Eastern Bloc, right? That's pretty
yeah.
Eastern Europe, right? Yeah, yeah. No, Prague's on the list, and then Budapest is supposed to be. You been in Budapest? It's
Yes,
supposed to
it's
be
they
insanity too.
Prague and Budapest are very similar in the vibe you feel when you go there. And they're both, I felt like Prague was easier to tackle because
Got it.
it's a smaller city center versus
Yep.
Budapest is it's just a much larger, it takes you more time to kind of get acquainted. Whereas with Prague, like there's that one city center and there's the little quaint alleyways and delicious street food and fantastic bars. Both incredible cities to go to, and would highly recommend skipping the next Paris and Rome and going to Prague and Budapest instead because it's more affordable and people are great. So
I love it. I'm going to sneak in one for myself. Have you been to Croatia? I've heard tons of really amazing things of Croatia, and that's been on the list.
so I was only in the capital of Croatia. I was in
Okay.
Zagreb, but I haven't been
Yep.
to like Dubrovnik and Split.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
the people there were super nice and the food was delicious and everything about Zagreb was great. But
Yeah.
I've heard that the coast is super nice. I think there's
There's
coastal
national
Europe,
parks.
right? There's
Yeah.
like coastal Europe and then there's like city center
Yep.
Europe. And I think those are
Yep.
two wildly different energies. But I think like Montenegro has some gorgeous, like Bay of
Yes.
Kotor, gorgeous cities on the coast. And then there's like city centers like off the beaten path, like Skopje, Macedonia has been like a
Yep.
really, really mind blowing experience for me. Belgrade, like some of those like cities that you don't expect to be like, wow. But Americans have traditionally just gone to like the same couple of larger cities in Europe and really left the rest for everyone else. So,
Well, there you go. You're
yeah.
getting on the fast track, people. Favorite way to spend your time?
Oh gosh, I love being alone. Don't let anyone hear that. But I love scrolling through TikTok and Twitter endlessly, and I don't watch much TV, don't watch many movies. I love being alone, taking walks, listening to podcasts, doing nothing scrolling endlessly on TikTok. And that's kind of the hack, right? It's like if you scroll on Twitter, eventually you get to what you've seen already. If you scroll on
Yep.
Instagram, you're seeing the same things. With TikTok,
It's
it's
so
an
good,
hour
dude.
and then it's 2 hours and you never see the same thing twice.
I have to
It's
modulate. I have to modulate myself with it because it is
bad.
so good, man. I'll
Yeah.
like go into just check what's going on or maybe do some research for something. The next thing I know, like an hour is gone. I'm behind my day, like all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like what just happened? This is like this time portal. Yeah, it is. Man, it is that good. Okay, two more. Favorite follow on Twitter.
Wow. Wow. Um, Sheesh. I'd say that, Nick is an OG and Nick is a
Yeah.
friend of mine and is always providing a ridiculous amount of value both through Twitter and the newsletter. So I'm going to go with Mr. Sharma.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I actually got to meet him at the last Geek Out. He was a really, really
He's the
nice
best.
human. Really,
Yeah.
yeah. He was just such a genuine. It was really cool to see the personality that he cultivates online is exactly who he is. Going back to that expectation setting, like he was just such a gem of human. I was just talking his ear off, and he doesn't know me. I'm just little nobody, and he was just oh yeah, here's what I would do. He was really shout out Nick Sharma. Okay, last one. If you could have dinner with any three people, dead or alive, fictional or non-fictional, so this is a 4-person setting. You're at one seat, and then you get to choose 3 people. Who would they be?
Oh God, I hate these questions. I never
So
know
that's
how to
rapid
answer this
fire.
one. Yeah. Wow. There's always like you can go like the cheesy, like my great grandmother route, and you can go like the like Michael Jackson route, and there's like the celebrity route. I wow. Um, Sheesh. Um, I feel
You
like I've
just need the
gone
first one,
complete.
the first
I've
blood,
gone
and then the other two will
completely
come.
brain dead. I mean, I'll say this. Tony Shea is definitely somebody that
Yeah.
I wish I could have
R.I.P.
met. Rest in peace. I mean, just thinking about having the ability to massively do things differently in a way that, not being a dick about it. just like wanting to do things differently in a way that you love the idea of providing great experiences. I would love to have dinner with, this is brutal. I honestly don't, there aren't many people that are like, wow, this would be incredible.
Tony,
it's hard to
Tony
ask
Shea.
that question. It's hard to ask that question to somebody that wants to be home alone.
I know, totally. Tony
like,
Shea and Nick Sharma will show up. We'll put Tony and Nick at your table, and then we'll go from there.
Leave the extra 2 spots empty.
Exactly. Eli, you're the best, man. Thanks for coming on the pod. This time is yours. Plug anything you want. Olipop, your feed. Take it away.
Yeah. If you're looking for Olipop, it's drinkolipop.com, drinkolipop on all socials. If you're looking for me, I'm at Eli Weiss with an extra S. So it's Eli, WEISSS on Twitter. And thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate your time. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. You actually, you make your rounds on the podcast, and you're actually a fairly prolific writer. There's a Wonderman article. There's some really good stuff. We'll link it in the show notes, but Eli's selling himself short here. There's a lot of, if you're wanting to learn how to really build a proper CX team, or just quite frankly, as a marketer, understanding the whole customer experience and not being such a quant in understanding how can we just drive down CAC. Like, obviously that's, something that you need to keep your mind on. But at the same time, like, if you can generate those really incredible experiences, all those other economic factors will just kind of, they'll fall into place, man. And so I think you do a really good job of kind of simplifying a really complex equation. So again, Eli, thank you so much for your time. That's it for us. Episode 20 is in the books. If you do want to get involved with Triple Whale, we are at trytriplewhale.com. We're on the Bird app at Triple Whale. We did change. We dropped the try, just Triple Whale. It's cleaner that way. Shout out social network pun. And then what else we got? Oh, we got whale mail. So I would be remiss not to mention our newsletter. It goes out every Tuesday, Thursday. Tuesday is an essay. Thursday is a morning brew wrap up style kind of thing. You can sign up right on our Twitter page. And then, yeah, that's all we got. So again, Eli, thank you. Oh, beautiful. Thank you, my man. Thank you so much. If you're ever out in Austin, give us a shout and we'll put you up, have some fun. And that's it for us, everybody. From Austin, from PA. That's it. We'll see everyone on the flip. Thanks again, Eli.
Thank you.